Next on AM 1480 WLEA, the Newsmaker Show. Here's Brian O'Neill.
And here's Alfred University Political Science Professor Emeritus, Dr. Robert A. Heineman.
Good morning to you, my man.
I brought you in to give us a big picture of the impeachment process, if you can call it that.
Yeah.
Big picture this.
Well, first of all, I think that there are Republicans in those hearings. So the idea that there aren't any Republicans in there, I don't think that's correct. But I don't think they are allowed to ask any questions or take any testimony or bring any witnesses. That's pretty clear. So we could be talking here about procedure, and I think increasingly you're going to see the Republicans focus on the unfairness of the procedure. So this guy Taylor, who there's bombshell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, he comes out of the State Department, and you can imagine the guys in the State Department are not at all pleased with Donald Trump. So you're not going to get any kind of, I think, favorable response from these people. And if you look at the story on this guy Taylor, it's clear that he's never, ever talked directly with Trump, or I'm not certain they talked to any of his staff directly. So you're just getting bits and pieces, and as you say, they're leaking these out to make it sound like there's an overwhelming case here for some sort of impeachment charges. And so far, I haven't seen anything here that looks at all like, I mean, it's really, well, it's just strange. But I think Steve Bannon now has set up a war room in Washington or Northern Virginia, and they're going to start operating a counter attack on this whole impeachment proceedings. And I would not be surprised that the attacks charging in the committee room may well have been instigated by Bannon and his people. And the fact is, the Trump people basically need somebody like Bannon to come in there and kind of coordinate some kind of position, so that H.W. Bush had Lee Atwater and W. Bush had Karl Rove, and Trump has Steve Bannon, who in the past has done a pretty good job of moving him toward victory. So I think things are beginning to get a little coordinated there from the Trump perspective. But I do think part of this coordination is going to aim at focusing on the unfairness of the procedure, which is something people can understand. And they're going to be laying that out more and more. And instead of getting into all this half-baked testimony and unchallenged claims, you can go directly to the fact that nobody has had a chance. So I think we're going to see that move more and more in that direction. But I think in terms of the big picture here, you have a situation where the Democrats are beginning to back themselves into a bit of a corner here, I think, in terms of if in fact there is an impeachment proceeding and somehow Trump is removed as president, which at this point I think is highly unlikely, but let's say he is. He's not going to go quietly. And all these discussions about, well, maybe he'll just give up and walk away. No, Trump is not going to do that. And so let's say he is removed, then what's to stop him from coming back and running for re-election? And if he were to do that, I mean, it would destroy the Republican Party. You can imagine how that would split the party right in half or whatever. And so from the Democrat point of view, that'd be a big plus. But on the other hand, the Democrats have put so much support into this whole impeachment thing, which is, again, I think is really quite insane. But they got to the point now where somehow they've got to come up with something. So this effort here on the part of Pelosi to say, well, we're not going to hold a vote now. I mean, that all indicates to me that, frankly, things are really in quite a chaotic situation there. So they're backing themselves into a position where they've got to do something, and I don't know if what they do is going to be at all favorable for them politically or even legally. So the bigger picture is that this is beginning to have some spin-offs, I think, that could be, they could be disasters for the Republican Party, or they could be pretty hurtful to the Democrats.
What Democrats hear when they watch CNN, MSNBC, and the three big networks is that President Trump gave a quid pro quo on the phone call with the Ukrainian leader. That's what they're hearing.
Well, there doesn't seem to be any evidence that I can see for that. And the bits that you get in the snippets here and there are from people who, for example, the whistleblower admits that he wasn't involved in the conversation. He hasn't seen the conversation that the president had with the president of Ukraine. I mean, this is just second and third hand information he or she is, and nobody's identifying who this person is. I mean, it is just bizarre. And in a situation that is really this serious, I mean, somewhere you've got to have a right to cross-examine and a right to hear directly and in full what's going on. And as far as I can tell, Trump hasn't done anything here.
Lindsey Graham said that people that get traffic tickets have more rights than Trump does right now.
Absolutely. He's absolutely right. It's just totally unfair, and that is something I think the American people, they can see that pretty clearly. So we'll see how they play this out. But I think turn Steve Bannon loose on this, you're going to get a much more coordinated counterattack. I don't think.
Now, Steve Bannon, is he back with the Trump administration?
I'm not certain he is. I think he's running his own little operation
there.
Yeah, and I think there's probably plenty of money for him to do that, and I think he can get plenty of support, because I think a lot of conservatives, frankly, are really pretty enraged by the way this is going. And then you've had the final kind of straw with Mr. Romney, who I'm really disappointed with, running that fake
I was going to ask you about
account.
that.
I mean, what is he thinking? Come on, Mitt. Let's get on the team here.
He is a never Trumper to the core now.
I guess, and I don't know what that's going to prove. He's going to be out there. I think going to be out there on the margins there. But again, I guess if it comes to a vote whether to convict Trump or not, Romney will not be a pro-Trump vote there.
Will Romney be able to survive in Utah?
Well, I don't know. Again, it depends on who runs against him, but he's just been elected, so he's got another 5 years.
Right.
Without any trouble there, and so I just hope he doesn't keep doing this sort of thing, because it's just embarrassing. I mean, if he wants to criticize Trump's policy here on health care or his policy in the Middle East, fine. Those are legitimate things to criticize, but this kind of backhanded, under-the-table attacks, I mean, that's just bizarre.
Talking to Dr. Robert Heineman, Alfred University Political Science Emeritus. Dr. Bob, Hillary Clinton accused Tulsi Gabbard, the congresswoman there from Hawaii, of being a Russian agent. What do you make of that?
Well, first, I don't think she accused her of being a Russian agent, but she certainly did accuse her of being a Russian asset.
Okay, asset, yeah.
And I saw some comments, I think from Axiom News or whatever, where they said that it's almost like she's gone nuts. But I think the thing the media really hasn't brought into play here, and we could talk about some of these other things that the media seems to be avoiding, like Mr. Epstein and some of these other real embarrassing situations. But what they're not bringing into play is she accused Trump of the same sort of thing, and Trump's people the same sort. And so we ended up with Mr. Mueller there, a 2-year investigation, $25 million off this half-baked claim made by the Clinton people that somehow Trump was in collusion with the Russians, and it came to nothing. Now she turns around and she's accusing this woman, Gabbard, of being some sort of colluding asset or a supporter of the Russians. I mean, it's just, again, it's bizarre. Where's she getting this? And the result of it has been that Gabbard's poll numbers have gone up. Not a great deal, but apparently enough to get her included in the next debate. And that'll be pretty interesting if she gets up there in November and gets a chance to defend herself and really tell Hillary Clinton what she thinks of her. I mean, that's just, where's Hillary coming from? I mean, it's just strange.
Do you think that the Democrats, and I'm talking about the voters here, would welcome her back with open arms,
Hillary?
looking at the other candidates?
Are you talking about Hillary?
Or do you think they would say, hey, come on, you've
Go
had
away.
your chance?
Go away. Yeah, just go away.
And I don't think the Epstein thing is going to help Hillary terribly.
Well, the whole Epstein thing is, again, a really nasty situation. And, again, as we said on the show, once he was arrested and put in prison, there's no way he was getting out of jail. He wasn't really in prison, getting out of jail alive, and he certainly did not get out alive. And I think the investigation in that, I'd just be kind of interested where that stands, because there doesn't seem to be any national media outcry about, what really happened to Mr. Epstein. And again, there doesn't seem to be any media coverage of all the people who were in fact involved with Mr. Epstein. Although, who is it, Prince Harry or Prince Andrew?
No, Prince Andrew.
Prince Andrew in England seems to be on the hot seat a bit there.
Prince Harry, by the way, told the media off recently. Prince Harry is the son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, and Prince Harry made a statement up to the media for paparazzi-type behavior.
Right.
And he said to them, you guys killed my mother. You're not going to push me around.
Right. No, I guess it's really pretty rough.
Over there, it's worse than here as far as
Yeah, the
paparazzi.
way people follow them into every kind of intimate moment they have, and taking pictures with telelenses and stuff.
Obnoxious.
But, I guess you're going to be a royal family. Those are the sorts of things. I don't know. That's a little unfair, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. But in any case, again, this whole media bias is really, at this point, is all focused on every kind of negative point they can make with Mr. Trump. And as we may note, that Trump pulling out of Syria, the Russians and the Syrians and the Turks all seem to have come to a reasonable, and the Kurds, reasonable modus vivendi there, basically keeping things pretty much under control. Now, of course, you see these, every once in a while you get a story, the Kurds are going to be denied their ambition for a national homeland. Yeah, well, I think that's true. The Kurds are not going to get a national homeland. They're not going to get a nation. And that's the way it's going to be. The best thing we can hope is they get a certain amount of stability and people aren't persecuting them. But the point is, pulling out, I think, was the right thing to do, and it looks like in terms of the stability of the situation and such, it's becoming halfway stable. Now,
can I jump in?
Well, I think you have. Yes, go ahead.
Pat Robertson, not to step on anybody's religion here, but Pat, and I don't intend to, but Pat Robertson...
is he still around?
Yes, he compared President Trump to, you got it, Neville Chamberlain for pulling out on the Kurds. I mean, at what point does that argument go away, and at what point do people stop the neocon, right, go to war, right?
Yeah. Well, of course, my position is that Neville Chamberlain was key to winning World War II. That Neville Chamberlain's, what he did with Hitler in Czechoslovakia, actually was key to winning World War II.
How so?
Well, because Hitler was a total Mona, I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. We could do a different. I know there are people that are very critical of this view, but they're clearly wrong. When Hitler moved into the Rhineland, the French had something like 90,000 troops or whatever in there, and Hitler said, if you get opposition, pull out. Don't get involved in military action. They moved into the Rhineland, the French backed out, and they took it over. Hitler was thinking, wow, this is a good deal. So next thing you know, he goes into Czechoslovakia, and Chamberlain agrees to split up Czechoslovakia. And you can go into a number of the reasons why Chamberlain did that, but he clearly knew that nobody was interested in starting another war. And after he came back to England and gave his Peace in Our Time little talk, he increased the British spending on Spitfires and air material, so that when the Germans began to bomb England and attack, the Brits had more Spitfires and planes than the Germans did. But the point is, by backing off, appeasing Hitler poured into the war effort even more and pushed more and more, and so within a short time, of course, we were at war. But the point is, if Chamberlain and the French and such had put up an obstacle to Hitler, it might have been another 1 or 2 years, maybe 2.5 years, before we'd ended up in an actual war. And let me point out to you at the end of the Patton movie, Patton is standing there looking up at the sky, and he's saying, "What are those going over there?" And one of his generals says, "Those are jet airplanes. The Germans have jet airplanes." And the Germans had, I don't know how many jet airplanes by that time. They just didn't have the material to put fuel them, and they didn't have enough training. How would it have been going into Normandy with the Germans with a whole fleet of jet airplanes? That wouldn't have been pleasant, buddy.
You know what, the former host of this show, who was on Monday, we replayed a Kevin Dorn show.
Yes.
The former host of the show, Kevin Dorn, used to say about that Patton movie, and I know because I was there when he was watching it. He said, boy, that Omar Bradley wrote the story that they used to make this movie, and Bradley really makes Patton out to be a heel, and Bradley makes himself out to be the big hero. But that's the way history books go, I suppose.
I guess we're getting off the subject a little bit.
So I did want to ask you.
So I'm not blaming Trump here. I think Trump did the right thing, and I think Neville Chamberlain did the right thing.
That's an interesting historical viewpoint. I've never heard that.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't. I'm not saying that they're analogous by any means either. But go ahead.
I just get tired of the Neville Chamberlain and it's Hitler again.
Well, there are some times where appeasement is a stupid thing to do. I wouldn't deny that at all. But in that case, it won the war for us.
Moving on to state, if we could.
Well, we could look at the polls here briefly.
I thought I heard you say polls earlier. I thought that's what you wanted to talk about. But you wanted to talk about something else.
Well, apparently,
he mentioned before the show that he wanted to talk about polls. Go ahead.
Please. No, I think the latest Quinnipiac poll shows Elizabeth Warren now has moved into, I think, a 7-point lead over Mr. Biden. And so she's beginning to gain some steam there. And the New York Times, again and again now on their webpage, and I think even on the hard copy, is asking the question, who else? Can we find somebody else to run? Who can we run as a candidate that can beat Donald Trump? And, of course, Mr. Cuomo's name hasn't come up yet, but I think it's going to.
State?
State, go ahead, state.
Okay,
you can segue into the state right there.
I really wanted to get to this because Assemblyman Phil Palmisano there has been talking about this very critically for some time. This is a tweet from Governor Andrew Cuomo that he posted Thursday afternoon around 2 o'clock. It says, early voting begins this Saturday,
right,
October 26th, for the November 5th general election. This is the first election in New York State where you can vote early. New Yorkers have 8 days of early voting. Find your polling place here, and then you're supposed to click the website. Yeah, your thoughts on early voting? Are you on the same page as Palmisano?
What?
Are you on the same page as Assemblyman Phil Palmisano on early voting?
Well, I think he's a very decent guy. I think we probably are then. No,
what Palmisano says is that he's very suspicious of early polling.
Oh yeah, I think it's
voting.
Yeah, it's. I don't think it's a good idea at all. But
he thinks it could lead to some rigging.
No.
Yes, rigging? He does.
Well, in any case, we got it, and I think it's what is it, from 9 to 2 or something like that. You can go in and I think you can vote on Sunday as well. So I think it's Saturday, Sunday across the board. In terms of early voting, and go on out and early vote just to be part of history, I guess, is one way of looking at it. But I think it does favor heavily organized groups like the unions and some of these other groups.
By the way, another Governor Cuomo question. He got $750,000 in funding for a Mother Cabrini statue in New York City. Now, I don't want to read his mind or anything, but I'm guessing that this is a political move to appease Catholics in some ways over the abortion.
Could be.
And also, it was a big New York. And aside from that, it could be partly that, but also, New York City Mayor de Blasio, I almost said Bloomberg. Mayor de Blasio was very much opposed to having a statue, and some of the, not the Me Too people, but some of the anti-statue movement types stepped up and said, we can't have her, and Governor Cuomo stepped up and said, wait, this is not an anti-immigrant person here. This is an immigrant we're talking about with Mother Cabrini.
Yeah, I have no idea why and who Mother Capri. Is it Capri or Cabrini?
Cabrini, and
Cabrini.
she's set up, like, I don't know if I'd say orphanages, but did a lot to help the poor.
A good person in any case.
Mother Teresa type.
Right. I don't know. I'm not in the middle of that kind of controversy, but I think your point about giving support to the Catholics and some of the things does kind of offset some of his other positions that Catholics are pretty critical of.
Maybe help him with Cardinal Dolan a little bit.
Maybe. De Blasio is finding himself in more and more difficulty out there in New York City, and so I'm not quite certain where all that's going to go either. That's
I saw something before we went on about the economic situation in New York City, which did not look too good.
No, and we're in the middle of a economic boom, to put it mildly. But crime rates and some of these other things in the city there are a lot of pretty unhappy police officers there. Yeah. So in any case, got anything else to talk about today?
No, I think that wraps things up for today.
Well, all right, then let's do it again sometime.
Thanks, Doc.
Oh.